of who our guest speaker is today. Thank you.
Good morning. DVC Academic Affairs and Research. Our guest speaker, Professor Fiona Mbai, Director Marketing and Corporate Communication, Mr. Muregi, staff and the students. I'm happy to stand before you here today to share with you this morning and communicate from the council that the council is aware of what we are doing and fully supports the activities that are the academic and others that also promote the mission and vision of the institution. As you are aware, the university has the mandate to do three things. One is to teach, two is to do research and disseminate the results, and three, we have the mandate to do community service. So this second mandate of research is also quoted with something they call scholarship. Scholarship is where you do that research and write it in that academic format. So the council thought that it's high time that you will also benefit, and the veterans will also feel free to share with the students and the staff present. For now, I think I will say thank you, and we'll speak more later.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ken Ramani, that you have just confided with us that the University Council is really supporting this. At this moment, I would like to invite the University Webmaster to make a presentation on the digital aspect. And then from there, Professor Bai will be observing and making that you are able to address the gaps which you might be having. So, Los Machadia is going to make the presentation in the next 15 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. I want for a moment, through imagination, we move out of the environment where we are. You imagine that person who woke up and want to know who is Dr. Ken Ramani. And since Dr. Ken Ramani is not there to answer, the person starts searching to get who Dr. Ken Ramani is. So that's the concept I want to bring to you this morning of you creating a digital presence online. If I Google who Dr. Solomon is, I'll be able to know Dr. Solomon even before I see him. Maybe I've seen his photos, I have seen his passion, I have seen he does golf, I've seen he's in pharmacy, he's done all this. So take a step with me as you go through the digital presence and building a brand. Yourself, you are a brand. First of all, you are a brand to your employers. These days when you apply for a job, people go online to research who is this who has applied. I have shortlisted these people. Who are they? So why do I need that digital presence? One, to build your brand online. That you know there's a pharmacy person. So who are these key people in the pharmacy? Who are these key people in this line? If I said that, who are the comedian? Chat will pop up. So you're building your brand online. Number two is that you'll be producing new products. In academic world, the new product that you're producing is the new knowledge. So you have something new for people to see. Apart from you taking and telling me, Rose, I have these new products. Who do you tell? You tell the people outside there. So with your digital presence, you are able to keep on updating them that I've now done a research on shoes, on clothes, on this, and all the way. You keep on generating new lead. By you telling them you're doing A, B, C, and 3, you are creating your online forums so that you keep on getting more people open to your shop, and your shop is you. Crisis reputation management. I'll take this in a different angle. Let's assume like what is happening right now with the hunger war. How do you do crisis management as yourself? For one, you can say we did a research, like the best way we approach this as the university. You remember there's something we held, there's a water summit that we held in Lodwar. So when the crisis thing started trending, we went out and actually produced the report that we did. So assuming there's a crisis in your line of academic, let's say there's some misinformation on drugs, and you have done a research on drug, you go ahead and put your paper forward, you tell people, look, I did research A, B, and C, and this is what happened. So you assist the community in research reputation. PR and advertising, public relations, where you keep on talking to people and telling them this, A, B, and 3, and also you're advertising your product, because you will find if you've conducted a research, you've gone to an extent of you having a product already in the market. So you use your digital presence to open your doors to sell your product. So how are people adjusting to the digital era? These days, people work in shops, but they work in shop either physically or electronically. So how are they? People have started embracing internet marketing, where you're looking for a product, you just go into internet and you search for it and you get it. Mobile marketing. I'm sure everyone here may have all their phones here. With all I mean, people have 1, 2, 3 gadgets these days, and you don't want to leave your phone. Why? Because you know it's an access. If you look at the people accessing even the media houses' websites, most of their traffic is coming from the mobile phone. So people have really embraced the mobile marketing. Social media marketing, you sit down, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, you're on LinkedIn. So this is the new trend. And viral marketing, where you have something, a message for it to be read, you've written it in such a good way so that everyone is just following that message. Everyone is watching that viral. So you do something, you want to create your own image, and then you put it in a way that it is very viral for people to not to resist reading it. Consumer-generated media. So these are media which are generated by the consumer. It's us. So I'll talk about blogs. Blogs is whereby you feature something. There are different blogs. So if you look at your line, there are some people who, you know, if I want to follow these people, they'll give me this kind of information. So your line is business. You'd like to create an environment where people know about the business things you're doing, or the business academic information, the products. So you create a blog and you join blog related. If you're in something like sports, you join blog related sports, so that you keep on getting updated information on what is happening in that specific area. There's social media. Social media is still the same. We are all in Facebook. But the difference between me and maybe Mr. Murigi is the kind of information that I look at. When I'm looking at the e-newspaper, he may look for the physical newspaper to see if the advert is there. If I'm looking for sports, maybe his area is different. He's into, maybe let's talk about something like drugs or building. So this happens. Social media is very wide, but narrow down to those areas which are sticking to your passion and into the area you are in. So if you are in business, there are those business forums. The same way there are Kenyans in Dubai, Kenyans here, people from Thika have Thika groups. So you narrow down to those specific. Then we have discussions forums. Yahoo, Google+, all those have some discussion forums. So you join those discussion forums that will help you get more information and even create yourself, so that if you write something, everyone is like, hey, this person is very resourceful. Let me just see what they just released. And people read and actually comment. And you are able to keep the discussion further and disseminate the knowledge you have, plus maybe the new product that you brought into the market. Lastly are the commentaries. These are mostly in the newspaper. You have to be a little bit connected for them to feature in. But they do appear, and you can also continue creating your image online. Social media. If I say social media, some people think this is Facebook, this is Twitter. But let's look forward and deeper into the different avenues that we have. The social media are the online technologies and practices that people use to share content, opinion, insight, experiences, and these days more so, it's on the media and other interaction forums. So the social media that we have currently and are very famous in Kenya are the Google+, the Twitter. I'll go through one by one. I'm sure you're aware of the Google+, the Twitter. Flickr is an avenue for you to share photos. So like now we are here, we are talking, you share that photo. You've gone to a training or even a class session, you share a photo and tell people, hey, look, I teach A, B, C, and D, and this is a group that I have just taught. So that one is just photo-based. Then we have Facebook, we are aware with. We have YouTube. YouTube, you share videos. You go to a lecture, you take a short video, and you upload. People look at the video and see, okay, this person, first of all, they gain knowledge from you, and number two, they look forward to your next release on YouTube. As a person, if you are able to be generating good enough products and good enough videos on YouTube, Google pays you. So it's two-way. You're benefiting because you're reaching more, and also you're engaging your people, and at the end of it, Google is able to pay you according to the number of views. Digs, Mailchimp, and Foursquare, they're not more so known in the Kenyan market, but they're also platforms of sharing information. But the three, they take videos, and photos. Let's look at the kind of people you talk to when you get to Facebook. Facebook at the moment has more than 1 billion active users. So when you're talking, if you've not gone to the extent of you blocking so many people, there are some people who block their clients so that if you're not friends, you're not able to see. If you've not got that far, your clients who you're talking to are 1 billion active. They're more than that, but the ones who you are sure they're active, they're 1 billion. Google Plus has 359 millions active users. LinkedIn is a professional page. I forgot to put it on the social media. It is a professional page whereby you share professional information, and you're able even to know who works in which company in the professional line. If you're in pharmacy, there are groups for pharmacy people, there are groups for business. Twitter has over 555 million. So basically, the audience is already there. If you want to grow yourself, you join this platform, you write something, you contribute. The key underlining word is that you have to keep on contributing. You follow what other people are saying. If you're not posting your own content, you can follow and do some comments here and there. So I'll end with the viral marketing. Viral marketing is where you create, I'm sure you've seen those videos which are shared on your WhatsApp. Something which is very nice and you captivating. You watch and you have to watch to the full, or at least when you start, you're like, okay, what is this? Those are the kind of information where you have, if for instance, you've done a research, you've come up with a new product. Instead of you just saying you've come up with a new product, you put the wording in such a way that people ask, what's difference in this shoe? What's difference in this line? So it's all about how you are putting out your information outside there. So I think that's what I had for today. I don't want to take a lot of time. I'll share the PPT with everyone who is here, but more so let's look forward to us creating our image online. Which platforms do I start to gain once you enroll that will enhance your image physically? Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, let us appreciate Los Machadia, the master. So our webmaster being in charge of the website, we know that all those tools are directed to that 24/7 tool, which will be able to ensure that we have visibility of both individuals and the institutions that we are working for. And that is what we are looking forward, that we need to build a community, and we need to communicate, and we need to have that visibility. So the webmaster, as would have said, is that our website is very active. I heard her quoting the media like Standard Digital, but you also have a very active website which can be able to be a good platform for all what we are doing. The researchers in the house, what we are doing, we need to be able to communicate and also sell ourselves. Let us be known. So at this point, I wish to welcome Dr. Ken Lamani to introduce the guest speaker. At least we understand our able speaker today, Professor Fiona Bai. Dr. Ken Lamani, welcome.
Good morning once again. Today, as you are aware, we have a guest, and there's the one I want to introduce that is also going to speak about our research, scholarship, grants, and all this kind of stuff. Professor Fiona Mbai is currently the Director, Research and Knowledge Exchange at the Technical University of Kenya, formerly Kenya Polytechnic. She holds a PhD in Biological Sciences from the University of Manchester, UK, an MSc in Endocrinology, and that's a Reproductive Physiology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, the US, and PSc in Zoology, that's Botany and Chemistry from the University of Bonn in India. Previously, Professor Mbai was a lecturer at Egerton University. She also worked as a postgraduate researcher at the University of California, USA, as a senior fellow in charge of Population Center for Research in Reproduction at the University of Washington, USA. And she also at some point worked as a senior research scientist at the Institute of Primate Research in Nairobi for many years. In fact, it's not a few years, for many years. Professor Mbai has a lot of experience both as an academic and also a researcher in the NGO world. Previously, she has been a deputy country director and a technical director with the International Medical Corps in Kenya. She also worked as a country director and a research director with the International Center for Reproductive Health. Professor Mbai in academic and writing, she has been a reviewer. She's a reviewer with the Journal of Chest Disease and Tuberculosis International, as well as the Journal of Educational Policy Research and Review. Professor Mbai has been, in fact, even quite recently, even now, has been a reviewer with the National Research Fund, the Kenya National Research Fund. I know most of you are aware of it. She has been one of those who review your applications for grants. And in terms of fundraising and the grant writing, you cannot go wrong if you approach Professor Mbai to tell you one or two things about grants. She has written so many proposals and won so many awards, grants, which, for impact research that most of us will envy. So, and she has been a facilitator, trainer in grant writing, proposal writing, and these are some of the things I believe when we get to the plenary we are going to engage and maybe share more. That as a university, that's all I could say briefly about, because if I were to speak about Professor Mbai, the CV could be more than 30 pages. So this is just but a summary of what she has accomplished. So as we are going to discuss more, maybe during the plenary after our presentation, from what I see during the Webometrics, this World University ranking, you find that most of our institutions, including MKU, we are usually not ranked in excellence. We may have to ask some of the questions on this and what it takes to be ranked in excellence. You find we are well ranked in openness, in presence, and other indicators, but when it comes to excellency, we are not there. And that is the intention of the council, is the wish of the council that from this meeting, at least we get into those things called Google Scholar, to also get into more publishing and posting all this, so that the university is also ranked in excellence. That's an indicator which is very important in Webometrics ranking. Thank you, and please let us put our hands together and welcome Professor Mbai to speak to us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramani. It's not every day that somebody stands up and says such wonderful things about you. I appreciate that, although you added a little bit more, but I appreciate. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. It's wonderful to be sharing knowledge across institutions in Kenya, because one of the things that the staff where I work and in a lot of other universities say is that we wish there could be more interaction and sharing of ideas in different places, especially because when you think about it, we're all trying to develop one country and one region. And the more you pull together, the better that your outcomes are going to be. I know Dr. Ramani and the DVC mentioned ranking competition and things like that, but those are temporary. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you slip a little bit, and it's always nice because it keeps you on your toes. So I'm really happy to be here. I thank you very much for your invitation, Madam, and I'm looking forward to more collaborations and interactions between your able staff and those in our institution. I think there isn't much more to add to what Dr. Ramani said, but I'll start off by just going over what I was given as the brief in terms of your interest and the things that you'd like brought up. Basically, the broad area is academic writing, touch a little bit on that, research and citations. From what I hear, your council is very interested in rankings of this institution, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But it all begins with publications. When you do your research, whether be it in social sciences or the other sciences, you must, applied or engineering sciences, you must end up with a publication. Now, when we talk about publication, because I was told this is quite a mixed group, you start with your term papers as undergraduates, your project papers in undergraduate, your theses or projects as masters, your PhDs, and also your publications, because as graduate students, you're going to publish in hopefully peer-reviewed journals, and also as academicians, staff, you're required to do this. The reason I bring that up now is because all these groups of people are interlinked. We have a system where the students who produce very nice projects can actually be coached to produce a publication. And that is a publication which is going to have your institutional affiliation. So look at every opportunity. No member of your institution is too low to produce a publication. It could be even something into Daily Nation. When the web web mistress, when she gave her presentation, she talked about all these opportunities, YouTube, Flickr, Twitter, and all those social media angles. You can actually put your outcomes, your research outcomes in those particular places, especially if you have projects or programs that impact on community development. How is this going to affect you? When it comes to university ranking, they're going to be counted for your impact, your visibility, and your presence in the community. So research can also influence those other parts of the overall institutional ranking. Then I was told to touch on Google Scholar. The webmaster also brought that up. I'm going to do it from a slightly different angle. She brought up the essentials, and I see in the program that you're going to have help in setting up Google Scholar account. I'm going to preempt that particular session by just requesting that if each individual member of this institution sets up a Google Scholar account, it would stand you in very good stead to have the webmaster create a Google Scholar account for the entire institution. This because the ranking that we use in Kenya most, known as Webometrics, is actually coming up with a ranking system, and they're going to look at institutional web ranking. A lot of institutions haven't done that, and many of those institutions that you see static on the ranking tables have done that. And I think this is a responsibility of the Webmaster's Office, and I think it could help you. It would also help you individually, because you could also desegregate this in terms of faculty and interest and domain expert areas. So you could have Google Scholar for engineers, Google Scholar for applied scientists, and Google Scholar for the social scientists. This would help in terms of even communicating internally who is working on what research. Finally, I'm going to talk about a little bit about what repositories are there. The webmaster is very interested in getting you out on the web. One of the things that you can have internally is create an electronic repository for all books, publications, theses, and conference presentations. That's a lot of information. The interesting thing about these e-repositories is, for example, I'll give you our example. I actually subscribe to a funding database, and every week we go and look for funding opportunities that apply to staff in our institution and add it to our website. If you wish to look at it, just Google Research Grants plus Kenya, Research Funding and Grants in Kenya. One of the things that you'll notice is the top 4. The first 3 are private organizations. Number 4 is the Technical University of Kenya. That is because practically every academic in the Republic of Kenya goes to that website and looks for funding opportunity. What does that do for us in ranking? When Webometrics looks at the hits on the TUK website, everybody who comes to TUK to look for funding is counted as one of the points for our institution, and therefore raising our profile. Not very much work, but it makes my university look good, and at the same time helping everybody else. So these e-repositories can be publications, funding opportunities, theses, conference attendance, and it would be nice because when we talk about Google Scholar, I think I'm going to mention that you need to have PDF-rich files, you need to have PowerPoint, you need to have document. So say your DVC here goes and presents in a European meeting her research work, and then she comes back. What the research director of your institution could do is require that every point it determines whether or not your work is going to be accepted by the editors of the journal of your choice. They look at, in addition of course to meeting their requirements, is this work going to add anything? And of course they have other interests which I'll bring up in a bit. And then of course your results have to be original. You can't have other people's work. So basically you start at the bottom and end up with original results. Literature review is followed by a field or desk review or laboratory research, depending on your academic domain. Of course, it is very important to pay attention to your data analysis, because there's nothing as bad as your paper being outrightly rejected because your data doesn't make sense, and it's just a small mistake which you could have fixed. And of course, your data analysis has a very, very significant impact on whether or not your results are original. So the structure of academic papers in general does not vary very much. I have to tell you that it is absolutely necessary to look at the journal where you intend to submit your work, and have the journal look at the instructions. They will tell you anything from the format, the font, the spacing, and the type of referencing that they require. For every single publication, whether or not you've been in the field a long time, it's important to look at the structure of the papers in every journal. The first thing we all know is the title. Then you have the abstract, which is a very brief description, usually between 250 to 400 words, depending again on the publication or the journal. And then a very important component is keywords. I'm going to bring this up again because keywords should actually run in your title, they should run in your abstract, and you should use them as much as possible in your text. And this, you use them as much as possible without getting annoying to the editor. But it is important because when it comes to indexing your journal or your paper, and when it comes to scoring it in terms of citation, if you have these things in place in the title, in the abstract, and in the body of your work, it's more likely than not to be cited and to be picked up by those who do citation analysis. Very many people will do the title, then they will do the abstract, and then they'll do the body, and none of these are going to have the exact same keywords. It's almost like a code that you're implanting in your paper, and this really helps. Of course, we all know that you start with the introduction, you describe your methods, the results, discussion, conclusion. Don't forget the acknowledgement. Sometimes it's good to acknowledge people who are rarely acknowledged, because that actually says something special about you as an individual. And there are people who actually look at some of these things. And then finally, there's supporting materials. In this day and age of big data, all the figures and all the tables that you would like to present in the body of your results. So a lot of journals are asking that you prepare those very well as you did those that are in the journal, and submit them as supporting materials. And then what happens is when the paper is published, you see a note at the bottom indicating additional materials. The beauty of supporting materials is so many collaborations have been born out of this particular area. And why do I keep hammering on collaborations? I feel, at least in our situation, we don't have enough money to fund everything that we would like to do. But when you get collaborators, it really helps because you go 50-50 on the costs of your projects. So how do you come up with an effective title? Just a few key points that one needs to look at. What is the main issue that you're talking about? It should also be concise, no 3-4 line titles. I know it sounds like a no-brainer, but it's usually nice to remind ourselves of these very basic things that we were taught so long ago. And then also you have to be very accurate. Don't talk about community development in economic policy of the Republic of Kenya. I mean, you have to be very careful to address exactly what it is. Your paper on community development, or is it on economic policy of the Republic of Kenya? Then you should use professional language. A lot of us have ranging from the younger ones, Sheng, to colloquialisms. Remember, this is an international publication, so someone in Australia or China might not quite get what you're referring to. So just be professional across the board. And then try and write something that will attract your readers. Nobody likes to read a very tedious and very difficult piece of work. It's usually nice if you are able to enjoy it and forget that you're actually reading academic work. The other thing is the abstract. Some key highlights. It should be as brief as you can possibly make it. We usually have our students in biomedical sciences do an abstract every semester. And by the end of the year, we have some very good skills in writing. You need to summarize the problem, the methods, the results, and the conclusion in less than 300 words. That's not an easy task for very young people, even for those of us who are mature. So the more you do this and actually make sure you do this, is also going to eventually increase your publication chances. It also has to be extremely accurate and very specific, because it is that they go beyond this point and read your paper or set it aside. And then, of course, make sure that you write it last, because as you're doing your introduction, your results, and your discussion, things are likely to change. And when you do it last, it helps in capturing everything. Keywords, as I mentioned earlier, they are important because they are the label of your manuscript or your paper. They are used for indexing and abstracting service. Therefore, they should be specific. And of course, if you're going to use abbreviations in your abstract or title, it's important to use established, accepted abbreviations. I think, for example, everybody in Kenya now knows what DNA is. I've heard a woman in the market talking about DNA, and she actually described it very well. So use those abstracts, those abbreviations that can be understood by just practically anybody without further explanation. So what are the essentials in manuscripts? They must be clear, useful research findings. And who do you need to convince? When you write your paper, the first place you take it to is the journal, and the first person to see it is the editor. The editor determines whether or not it's going for peer review. So this is where you have to get your foot in the door. And then after that, the reviewers, who will be the domain experts, and the audience. Editors also get pretty upset if you don't follow the guidelines to authors. So you could actually have a very good body of work that is turned down because you upset the editor, the first person to see your work. And then, of course, the reviewers are the domain experts who look at the content, and they know whether or not certain aspects of your work have been done before or presented elsewhere. What are the publication types out there? Full articles. These are usually substantial, complete, and comprehensive works. Basically, what full articles cover is the question of, is my message sufficient for a full article? Letters and short communications, these are quick and early. Again, remember what I said about being scooped. If you come up with a cure for TB, where people don't have to take the drugs for a year or so, and have the chemical formulation and you've already applied for patent, this is an outcome that's likely to affect the human race. So it is important for you as an academic to get that information out there and publish it. So in the social sciences, perhaps a particular wave of social behavior can be addressed by a particular action, and you can have this out there by publishing short communications or letters. But the question is whatever it is that you want to take there very impressive, that it's going to make the 9 o'clock news? It has to be something very catchy. And then, of course, I mentioned this earlier, review papers, and these are summaries of recent developments. Work on them. We would be the ones to write it. So that is how we learned how to do these things. So how do you select journals? How do you decide what journal does my work go into? This is a problem that a lot of, particularly the young and upcoming academics, have an issue with. So basically you have to answer 4 questions or look at 4 particular issues. You need to look at who is the audience. So the intended audience of your work is important. And you also have to choose only one journal and This is because if you submit the same paper in 2 journals, you'll get in trouble, because at the end you have to sign that this work has not been published elsewhere, and there you go, you've lost your opportunity. And retracting these things takes so much longer. It's not just hit send. It takes a lot of issues. And then, of course, it's nice to, if you're a young, early career person, talk to your supervisor. And if you're an established scientist, it doesn't hurt to talk to colleagues who can actually provide good suggestions, because the body of work out there is so much. None of us can actually know everything that's going on and all the new developments. So talk to people. And then, of course, come up with a short list of potential journals where you would like to send your work, and then go from there. So you have to investigate your journal short list on another series of issues. What is the aim and the scope of that journal? Does it cover your particular area of expertise? What type of articles? Is it letters, short communications, full-length articles, or reviews? Some journals set aside a publication issue for just reviews, but the rest of the time they actually publish regular articles. Then who are the people who will read this? Is it academic or professionals? So there are journals, for example, I know of journals that will be read by physicians, and other journals which will be read by all health professionals. There are journals that I know some social scientists in communication are going to read because they're interested in health communication. So you have to look at exactly where you're going. And then, are these journals circulated by subscription or open access? This issue of subscription or open access is becoming quite a problem, particularly for scientists in the African region. There's some publication houses, I should put it that way, that actually ask you to pay a publication fee in the millions of shillings per year, and you can submit all your papers there. The problem is, anybody who wants to access your paper has to pay a download charge. And recently, one such, I won't name it because of proprietary information, one such publishing house has been chucked by the whole of the University of California system, which is a series of very many universities. And my understanding is that the same is happening in Europe, because the authors of those papers feel that when they submit their material, and they have paid a subscription charge, why should their colleagues or other people be made to pay to access those journals? So these journals are actually, or publishing houses, not just journals, because the publishing house has a whole slew of journals, so it's not just one journal, are affecting access to findings. The good thing is many of the European Union and the American government and others have made it quite clear that if you receive funding from their institution, then your journal has to be open access. In other words, anybody anywhere should be able to read your work. Why is it a good idea for you to publish in open access journals? From a selfish perspective, then all these tracking and citation index institutions are going to find you, and your citation index and impact factor is going to rise. So it's also to your advantage to publish in open access. This, of course, in addition to the fact that everybody else is going to be able to reach you and collaborate with you if you so wish. Then you have to look at whether the peer review process is single blind, double blind, or open. I like the open peer review processes because these are, it's like an open secret. You know who reviewed your work. You can actually look up their CV and their background, so there are no issues. Single blind is one reviewer looking at your work, and of course the double blind is two reviewers who don't know each other, who look at your work and make a determination and ask you to make corrections. So look at the journal and make up your mind in terms of exactly which direction you want to go. Remember, the reason I say that is when I say make up your mind, because are you willing to wait as long as it takes for these peer review processes to finish? And then of course there's a bibliometrics, that's a fancy way of saying the references. Different publishing houses have different requirements on how you do that. And then of course, has your content got an innovation that you'd like showcased in a particular journal? It's really up to you to select the journal. But these are the things that you need to think through in terms of your paper. It's actually very nice to also add onto this is if you set up your own institutional research journal. I don't know, do you have a research journal here? You've started a research journal. So you have. And the peer reviewers are internal. So those are some of the things to think about. Who are your peer reviewers going to be? Which domains are you going to pick on? And then also this shortlist. If your constituents feel that their journals, the journals that are in their domains do not cover everything they want, what is it that they would like to put here? I know Kenyans like stakeholder involvement, but this is one case where stakeholder involvement is really going to encourage the members of this institution or any other institutions to actually come up with what is required. So how do you figure out how to structure your paper for a particular journal? This is done through the author guide in every single journal, and it's online. Pick the journal in whatever your area, engineering, applied sciences, social sciences, and it's on the homepage. And you just click on it, follow the directions to how you're supposed to write your manuscript, because a lot of people don't realize it's going to save a lot of time. So this is for the Sage Publishing House, and the Sage Publishing House is huge. They have articles in various journals, and they have given you a step-by-step menu to follow from pre-submission, which helps readers find your article, submitting your article, editorial practices of that publishing house, the policy of peer review, and who are the authors and what do they need to know about the authors. And this is important. I don't know if the Commission for University Education rules apply to private universities, but now for promotion from lecturer to senior lecturer to associate professor, you need to acquire a certain number of points in your publication. And does it apply to you too? So if you look at someone who's the first author, they get the most of the points. Second author gets fewer. Third author, even fewer. And final author. So this has turned its head on what we grew up doing. Final author is always the senior most person in the whole publication. Now that senior most person might be an associate professor who wants to get the large amount of points required to make them a full professor. So are they going to have an issue with this PhD student who did most of the work being first author? So it is important for the research management to actually think ahead and determine exactly how that is going to work for the institution. It will save a lot of unhappy people. It doesn't mean that just because the senior most person is going to get a lot of points or a few points, they should kick out the master's or PhD student, because remember, this is somebody who's coming up. So a lot of this must be agreed on upfront, or in many cases, some institutions have come up with a policy. This is your contribution to this work, you're number one. This is your contribution, you're number two. And the entire research and academic community know that upfront, so there are no issues with respect to that. You just go to whatever publishing house. I just put this screenshot of the submission guidelines just to show you how one of them looks like. So when you're selecting journals, I have to tell you, be careful. There are predators out there, and also journals which have been hijacked. Recently, there's another trend where you get an email, especially if you're in Gmail, telling you that International Journal of something or other wishes to request you to submit your papers there. Chances are that is phishing, and those are the most dangerous kind. Phishing is mostly emanating from China. And what they do is they write to you and tell you, they've looked at your previous works and you're a very good author, so can you submit your work for publication? What they then do is they look at your idea, and then they sell that idea to a group in China that will work on it quickly and publish your work. Yes, they have sort of a fake journal somewhere where they'll put your paper, you're satisfied, and you're gone. But the quality of the work they end up producing from your idea is so much better. So be careful. Predatory journals are those journals that just want to make money. They will ask you to submit your paper. I told you earlier how to recognize them. And if a journal tells you that you're paying for your paper to be published, that is a red flag. If a lot of the good journals tell you these are article processing charges, and they'll tell you, if you have X number of photographs, this is how much you pay, and these are the legitimate processing charges. You're not paying to have your paper published. You're actually paying to defray the costs. And smart institutions have done this. If you publish in journals that are not predatory and hijacked, as I'll talk about in a bit, the universities are now supporting staff in that they will give you a refund as long as you only paid for processing charges. So you get support to publish in the right place, and you're on your own if you choose to go for these other quick journals. The danger of those quick journals is you're going to put your institution as the affiliate. So now your institution will become your partner in crime. And everywhere, people will be saying, oh no, those guys, they only publish in predatory journals. So what we have done in our institution is we've created a public space where we put, it's sort of like an e-repository, where we put all our staff publications, only if they're not in predatory journals. In addition to that, we do a list. The whole university, total publications, this faculty, total publication. So we can tell this publication, this faculty did 50, another one did 100, and one other one did 200. So now that sense of ownership, like we're not doing too well, comes in. The third one is, in each faculty, which departments published and how many papers did they publish. So the departments that are not publishing at all then show up. The interesting thing is, it's not always very easy to come up with or to find, as research managers, the book chapters that people have done. And we always find that on the day that we release this list, we get a flurry of book chapters that people have done. This is really important because university management has to report on performance contracting, and it's really good for them to have this information for the whole institution at the fingertips. Hijacked journals are different kind. These are what we call the pretenders. They will take the title of a journal that you know, a journal that you've known about for long and just change one word. And so people will think that particular journal is the actual bona fide journal. And you end up going and submitting your paper in a hijacked journal. My own PhD student fell casualty to this. I was away. I told him verbally, submit in this journal, go and check. And he landed on the hijacked. So he ended up publishing some very good work in a fake journal. And there was really very little we could do. Unfortunately, he paid for it in a way that he's not likely to forget. Before you defend your PhD or your master's, I think your policy is that you have to do a certain number of papers. So in his case, that paper is gone. You still have to do a proper paper to be able to graduate. And he's finished, he's defended and everything, but he says the one lesson he'll never forget is to make sure it's not a hijacked or predatory journal before he publishes. That's a wonderful, lifelong, but very expensive lesson. But it's nice for everybody to kind of learn that it exists and look out for it. So what are the characteristics of these predatory journals? Am I taking too long? It's okay. Okay. So features will include poor practice and very unambiguous criteria. And this unambiguous criteria is the oldest sin itself, cash. They only talk about pay this. And then the most concerning feature is the claim to peer review. And then in addition to this peer review, they put names of people who don't even know that they've been listed there as peer reviewers. So it's really important to watch that. And the one thing you'll know about these is that they'll publish anything as long as the processing or the publication charges are paid. And of course, journalists are my favorite people in the whole world. They tell us everything that everybody else wants to hide. And John Bohannon submitted the same paper in 300 journals. I think you should actually look him up and read the paper that he did submit. It was total rubbish. Even a high school kid would have been able to wonder what is going on here. And they accepted his paper and published it. So look it up, and if you're up for some amusement this afternoon, that's a nice way to hang out. Maybe read it as a group, it's even more funny. So there are ways to avoid falling prey to predatory journals. One is actually looking at sites that list these things, and the other is looking at open access and scholarly journals which are bona fide. So Beale's list, Beale is a professor in Colorado. He got fed up of these people and made up a list. He got sued, so he had to change the name of the list. And instead of saying predatory journals, he had to say potentially predatory journals. It doesn't make a difference, they're still predatory. And the Beale's list is fantastic because you just click on the site, and it's usually very helpful with our upcoming early career. You know, these people who have things in their ears all the time, they're very good at going to check all these things. So grab one in the corridor and tell them, come and learn how to do something. So the other one is the Directory of Open Access Journal. This lists bona fide journals. And then the Committee on Publication Ethics will list some, but it will also give you the ethical principles. And Open Access Scholarly Association is coming up with some very, very good lists of different disciplines. It's really helpful if you don't want to read that. And then Stop Predatory Journals is a very nice place where when they find one, there's an upload system where you get a predatory journal blacklisted. it's also good to, I haven't put it here, but SCIMAGO, S-C-I, and then little M-A-G-O, is the site that is used by Webometrics, the ranking facility that ranks Kenyan universities and African universities as well. And SCIMAGO has done something special. They have an Excel file with about 25 to 30,000 proper papers. And basically what I say to everybody is, if you can't find a journal there that you can publish your work in, I think you're in trouble. And that is the easy way out. But it's also good to look at some of these others so that you can raise your awareness. These things do have consequences. In Kenya, we like to say choices have consequences. So this Predatory publisher was fined a huge amount, and this was after scamming a lot of scientists. What the scientists did is go and raise a class action. They got together because they had been scammed, and they sued the publisher. And he had to pay serious fines. The scientist's goal was to put him out of business, and at least they accomplished that. They were not looking for big payouts. However, there are people who have different opinions. This is an editorial in, shall I say, not a predatory journal, a journal that is highly ranked. And they query, why should we worry less about predatory journals and think more about the quality of research? And up to this point, I've tried to convince you that yes, you can have very good quality research that ends up in a predatory journal. So you should worry about the predatory journals as well. Finally, on quality of publications, the age-old issue of plagiarism. This is academic integrity and intellectual property. So this is respect for intellectual standards. At this point, it would be nice to interject that we kept hearing how we were producing half-baked students, right? We heard all those news a few years ago. Universities in Kenya are producing half-baked students. And then last week, I find that these students are writing term papers for British students in British universities. And those students in British universities are passing with their upper seconds and first classes. Some, I'm thinking, wait a minute, are these our half-baked students? So those kids, like I said, who have things in their ears all the time, are sharp. And the only problem is they've missed out on the academic integrity part. And now, Kenya is leading. Immediately, a week after, we had the best teacher in the world. The next week, we have the best students who can actually make a lot of money by writing term papers for students in America and the US. So this integrity issue is not a small thing. So these are some of the things that as institutions collectively, even as lecturers, we need to talk about, because you never know which kid is going to listen to you and, you know, fix whatever it is they were going to do. The other thing is accountability. How honest are you about the entire process of your academic writing, be it a book, be it co-authorship? Have you asked colleagues to help write a part of a paper? And then when they finally come to, they find that they have not been included in the publication authorship. These are small things that in the long run are much better. It's so much better to put somebody on the publication list than have to dodge them for the rest of your academic career. And then, of course, you need to have respect for intellectual property rights and also acknowledging original work. If somebody has done some work, give them the credit. By the way, it doesn't cost you anything. It makes you look like a stand-up guy or lady. So words, phrases, ideas that belong to other people must be acknowledged. And of course, basic definition of plagiarism, surprisingly, a lot of people are like, yeah, it's when you cheat. It's basically when you use someone else's work or output incorrectly. In other words, pretending that it is yours. It is simple and base as that. So you have to credit the words, concepts from every source, including your own, to avoid plagiarism. Why do you do that? If you are writing a paper, you're an expert in a particular field, it is always nice to reference yourself because you've published many papers in that area before. Why? Number one, it increases your citation index, and number two, it shows that you believe in your own work. So a lot of people don't reference themselves, but if you do, don't think, oh, I wrote this paper. You must include it in the reference as well. So once these things have been done, electronic repositories, I touched on this earlier a little bit. So basically, it makes intellectual output of an organization or a number of organizations freely and openly available. I just mentioned to you that we put on the net our staff publications and only those that are not in predatory journals. In different departments, you could do that. In many institutions, there's just no time because all our staff are teaching. But if you can come up with the web office taking charge of that, then a library is a very good source because it offers digital access and information retrieval from the collection. So these are theses and published works. And in fact, most of universities in the West now have digital access to theses and student projects. So, so there's the digital and the actual physical repository. There are others. Open online public access, catalog, e-books, and e-journals. But these, of course, remember, they are subscription-based. Then you also have bibliographic databases, CINAHL, Medline, PsycInfo, Embase, the Cochrane Library, Web of Science, and this will vary depending on your subject area. And then there are quite a number of citation management tools, things like ResearchGate and Google Scholar, which you've heard of earlier this morning. And repositories will include access to online referencing and a live librarian. So things like Reference Manager, which you've used before, toolkits such as those are really helpful. So the electronic repositories come in different ways. The ones for managing citations, the institutional ones for managing output, and also the journals themselves, which have the publications. So it's good to have a handle in each and every one of these. So academic research publications have digital repositories. These usually look at how many publications an individual has or institution. The most common, they have plenty. Sci-Hub, Scopus, ResearchGate, and of course, Google Scholar. Google Scholar is easy to use. You can create individual Google Scholar profiles, I said earlier, and also an institutional Google Scholar profile. The advantage of the Google Scholar institutional profile is that it's going to put your institution at an advantage when it comes to ranking, because they compare institutions, they don't compare individuals. So you need your university to have a good name. So it's important to look at that. So academic research publication digital repositories are for journal citation reports. Journal citation reports look at how many times your work has been cited. And what do we mean by that? If person X writes a paper and they cite your work, you need 5 person X's to cite your work in order to get a score. In some places, you need 10 people to cite your work in order to get a score. Again, I mentioned it's important to use keywords in the title as well as in the content repeatedly, so that your article can actually be caught by the digital repository search criteria, because they're going to look for certain things. If it is adolescent absenteeism from educational facilities, so they're going to look at adolescent education and facilities. So those are keywords that you need to use. You don't want to be dropped from each of these repositories because you just did not use something so small. And then best of all, keep your name consistent. I know, for example, married ladies change names, but for the academic publishing pathway, they retain the same name up to the end. That way, you'll still be captured all along. So an example of this is Google Scholar. I took the liberty of picking somebody who has a very good Google Scholar profile. In the interest of privacy, I've blocked out the name because that's not what we are after. But if you look at that corner, you see 3 rows. One is citation, H index, and I index. The citation, all the number of times that the papers by this author have been cited by others. This is someone in the Republic of Kenya, is more than 1,000 times. Then you look at the I-10 index. The I-10 index means that out of those 1,085 papers, how many papers have been cited more than 10 times? And that comes down to 30. A lot of people get impressed, and I've seen even articles written about such individuals. Oh my, he's been cited 1,000 times, right? Maybe it's a fluke. He's only been cited more than 10 times, 38 times. So it is really important to actually look at the quality of the work, because if it is high quality work, then you will get cited more than 10 times more frequently. Do you get it? It's a subtle, that's why they put the I-10 index. Then you have the H index. The H index basically means if you have 5 citations and you have 3, 5, 10, 15, and 20. You pick from the 5 going forward, because all of the numbers going up from 5 contain a 5, right? But below that, it is a 3. So that is the H index. So they pick so the H index of those 5 numbers would be 4, because 5 will appear in the 5, to appear in the 9, and it will appear in the others. The advantage of Google Scholar, again, is, remember I said your paper is good based on the number of times people are coming and looking at your paper, right? So if you look at the top of the title of each paper, is while you're at this point, you can actually click on that and it is hyperlinked to the actual paper. So the people who are doing webometrics in their database, they're going to get a click that this person's paper was accessed, and it's going to record into your institutional profile. The important thing about the Google Scholar citations is they are used by webometrics. Webometrics uses this particular database to look at the publication number. The downside is, in order to equalize research intensive and small universities, what they do is they remove the top 10 performance. So your very, very good researchers do not contribute to your citation. They remove those so that they can normalize the field for everybody. So what do institutions have to do about this? Your top 10 performance should coach and have other people publish without that top 10 performer in the list and produce high quality, citable journals. So this is an issue with the smaller, less research intensive or new universities. All universities like Harvard, MIT have really high scores because they have those very high-performing researchers. They have a lot. Take the top 10%, we still have many more. So these are the strategic directions for academic institutions. So keep in mind citations, H-index, and the I-10 index. These are really important when you're measuring citation analysis. So one of the key things of measuring citation analysis is the impact factor. Most journals will tell you what the impact factor. Click on the journal, somewhere on the top, on the sides, you will find the journal impact factor. Some have even gone as far as showing you over the last 5 years what is the average impact factor of this journal. An impact factor is how many times the papers from that particular journal have been cited. So if you publish in a journal of an impact factor of 5, it means the citation index of that journal is 5, not of you as the individual. It is the journal. So it is always important to have your publications in a high impact factor journal because the chances of your paper being cited also go up. So why use the H-index in the citation analysis? This gives you an idea of how much impact a particular article or a particular person, remember I said make sure that your name is consistent, has had by showing how the authors have cited their own work or other people have cited their work. So the H-index, as I mentioned, is a particular tactic that is used to determine individual citation capacity. So what is citation analysis? It is the process in which the impact or quality of an article is assessed by counting the number of times that other authors have mentioned your work. So this will give the particular impact of that publication or the author. But there's no single citation method or analytical method that collects all publications and their cited references. All of the ones that we know, including Web of Science, Scopus, Google Scholar, and quite a number of other databases have very limited citation data. In other words, they're not perfect. So some of the reasons that the ranking charts use several different options is because there'll be something in Google Scholar that is not available in Scopus or in Web of Science. So as institutions, it's also good to actually come up with a matrix and find out who is doing what. For instance, Web of Science indexes about 10,000 journals in the arts, humanities, science, and social sciences. This is good. And there's different ways of finding out how Web of Science will index your journals. And I've got step-by-step description here. And since you'll have access to this PowerPoint, you can look at it. So you just Google Web of Science and then go to the search and you'll be able to tell for yourself how you're rated. It's important that I'll highlight some things to ensure that particular names and popular names, if you need your institution to benefit from your research works, in red you can see I've inserted Mount Kenya University. because they pay your salary and you're doing research under their auspices. And when the ranking comes out that this university is a very good university, you're going to take the glory that I work in a very good university. So these are very important areas. Make sure that your name in full and initials is always consistent. These will help the citation analysis capture all your data appropriately. Google Scholar, as we've talked about, provides citation counts for articles which are found within Google Scholar, and this will depend on the discipline and cited article. And indexing of Google Scholar journals and more publication types than any of the other databases. That's why everybody is all abuzz about Google Scholar. But what it's not specific about is what is included in the tool and information on how they obtain their content. So there's an opacity in terms of exactly how does Google Scholar accomplish what they do. What I do know is a lot of the ranking sites depend heavily on Google Scholar. One other tool that is really cool and interesting to use is Hartsig's Publish or Perish. I was hoping I could be able to, this is actually a hyperlink. You go to use this tool and you search your name, and then you deselect the articles that are retrieved that do not belong to you. They belong to somebody with the same last name and similar initials. And then it will actually show you your real H index. Google Scholar is unable, I mean, they're always pumping names and papers of other people who have never met on my profile. So it's important for you to make sure that Google Scholar has your real papers. But when you go to Hartsig's Publish or Perish, the research manager and the webmaster can easily do a cross-check. So what we do in my institution is we have the staff payment list for all the staff that have taught and are therefore paid. So we use that list to actually search, because those are the people we know are employed by our institution, and those are their real names, and therefore we look at whether or not they're the ones who have published. This is an extremely, extremely important quality control check, because the Research Management Office and the institution actually is responsible by making sure that there is no liability. Because if one person goes and claims papers and puts them on Google Scholar that don't belong to him, the reputation of everybody else has actually been called into question. So this is a really important job for the research management. The other one is Scopus. Scopus is also used by Webometrics, and it indexes about 15,000 journals from about 4,000 different publishers. What that tells you is that it isn't a complete coverage. Then there are other databases, and in the PowerPoint you have the ones in blue are actually hyperlinks, so you can actually go and look at this further detail. So all these databases have very limited citation counts. I know a lot of people in the health sector feel that unless your paper has been put on PubMed, it doesn't count. But remember, PubMed has only a fraction of the good papers in the health sector. Finally, the good part, university rankings. This is good for the managers, this is good for us all, so that we can say my university came number 1, number 2, number 3. So there are many rankings and league tables to consider, but you have to remember certain things as we go forward. The methodologies used by each must be assessed very carefully, and then also look at the factors, which get considered when ranking universities. So how does that affect us? let's just look at a historical perspective initially. The first international ranking of universities happened in 2003. This was first done in China, no surprise there. And this was the academic ranking of world universities. Interestingly, the Times Higher Education Ranking, which ranks globally, came out April 3rd. And the Chinese have been chucked by, they have actually taken over, because in 2011 to 2015, Japan was #1 in Asia, and 2015 to 2018, National University of Singapore was #1, and now 2019, April, China has taken this up. Remember when I told you about fishing and getting good ideas and publishing good papers? So these connections actually exist. The other bodies, Times Higher Education, the top 10 in the April ranking was, I think, Oxford and Cambridge, 1, 2, no surprise there. Then followed by 4 Ivy League, MIT, Yale, things like that. Stanford was up there. And of course, in the top 10, there was no African or Asian institution. So there's a whole group of ranking systems. The one that we look at most is Webometrics. And this one you can actually rank Kenyan universities and see how we perform against each other. So we tend to like that one. In the UK, universities, they look at a variety of things. If you look at what I've got there in red, combination of teaching, research, citations, knowledge transfer, and international outlook. And I think Webometrics has taken this. In Webometrics, you find presence, impact, openness, and excellence. And these areas look at teaching, research, citations, community engagement, and things like that. So it's a good thing to have a look at this. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner of that particular side, you will see Mount Kenya University. And sorry, I didn't expect this to be so small. But in the January 2019 rankings, as you probably already know, Mount Kenya was at number 13. The rankings are a combination of presence, impact, and openness, and excellence. The important thing about excellence is completely and utterly devoted to citations, citation index. They even use Google Scholar to measure your university's performance. So that is the reason why you're hearing a lot from the webmaster about Google Scholar, about Twitter, and all those other social media angles, because they will talk to the presence of your institution. They will talk to the impact on society of your institution, and they'll also talk to the openness. If you have identified a new variety of beans that can grow in the Thika area, that is high impact, and it is also openness because you're talking about this. This does not necessarily have to be in the research section of your website, but it has to be featured. And all of these add up. If you look at this, we are comparing the circled areas is the presence of Kenyatta University and Egerton University. Now, the lower the number, the better off. If you look at the presence of Kenyatta University, it is way better than that of Egerton University. If you look at the impact right next to that of Kenyatta University, it scores 1009, and the impact of Egerton is 843. So the presence of an institution far outweighs the impact because you're going to get a better score. However, if you look at the last column, the publication or excellence of Kenyatta University is about 2,765 compared to 2,899 from Egerton. So that tells you excellence has a pretty heavy weight in terms of positioning of institutions on the ranking. So while your teaching commitment, your research results, your perceived international, regional, and local prestige or links with the communities and other industrial and economic activities, you need to publish high-impact, citable papers. And these papers need to be able to be linked to your institution for it to show up in terms of output at this stage. So I think I've connected what your webmaster was talking about in terms of social media and this particular aspect. So excellence, basically I've put it in red at the top. Research output is key for ranking on webometrics. That we have looked at it upside down, inside out. It's not negotiable. And this must be informal, e-journal repositories and publications. Webometrics uses Google Scholar, so it is essential for any institutions that wants to feature there to do that. The important thing that I have to warn you about is do not decide, okay, we are going to do Google Scholar for Mount Kenya University staff, and then we are going to do it in each faculty, and then we're going to turn around and do it all in French, and then Japanese and Kiswahili. That is cheating. They'll chuck you out because you're trying to increase the advantage by adding more pages. So some big universities in the Republic of Kenya have tried to pull that one, and they've been removed from the listing of that year. And once you've been on the listing as a university that cheats, it's kind of hard to remove that reputation from yourself. I wanted to just quickly go through what impact measures. Impact measures external links to the university web domain from other sites. And this is pretty much the job of your webmaster and your heads of department and your heads of institutions. Every time your university is mentioned elsewhere, even if it's on the online edition of Daily Nation, your communications person should be able to call Daily Nation and say, put a link on the place where you've mentioned a university that opens our webpage, because those link backs are hits to your university and they actually talk about your impact. So this is in academic performance, the value of the information on your site and the usefulness of the services that people get here, which of course it's a teaching institution, therefore the teaching quality. So if your student excels and plays chess in China, wherever that is put, whether BBC or Voice of America, you should be able to have the online link back to your institution page. So the total number of web pages which are hosted in the main web domain indicate presence, and this is in all sorts of formats which are recognized by Google. And this is static or dynamic pages. You know those dynamic pages where you have the photo of all the big people of your university, meeting guests and what have you. It's also nice to have photos of all the wonderful students and all the accomplishments they're making and all the discoveries. So mix it up a little bit. And of course, other rich files. Of course, it doesn't negate that from a research perspective, you only need 2 publications and research content. Then openness, external links to the university and repository are explicitly recognized. I mentioned to you that we have a funding page on the research site, and if you search Google, it will take you to that particular, and it's one of the results, and I think ours is number 4 of the top 4 in in Kenya. And excellence basically is research outputs. And this is a very, very important topic for webometrics. Academic papers need to be published in high-impact journals, and we've talked about what that impact factor is, and also the citation index. So university scientific output, I mentioned this earlier, is 10% of the most cited papers in their respective fields. So they remove the top 10%. Caution again, rankings are based on what is measured than what is relevant or important. So while we try and ask management to do X, Y, Z, or we ask head of departments to do X, Y, Z, we have to keep a balance, because in the long run, it is what is relevant and important to the academic institution, its mission and its goal that you need to focus on. But at the same time, pull in some of these things so that you can have the name of the university feature. And then it is also very sensitive to small changes in the weightings that are used. And these weightings were the H index and the I-10 I told you about. So these small things can really shift the ratings. So a note of consolation, when we first started working on this, we were at number 33. First year we went to number 8, then we were pushed back all the way to 15 and have stabilized at 12, because we did what was important, get the core, the foundation strong. So no matter how many of these little changes come up, we stay similar. Also, pay attention to the rankings. Avoid rankings that are done by for-profit companies, because as you very well know, for-profit companies are looking at the bottom line. That is what they're interested in. Finally, I think having taken all these on board, it's just important for all of us to know that it's better not to rush to publish a paper in any journal. Take your time, go through the needs, the points that you need to consider, publish in a relatively good journal. I tell people in our institutions who are impatient that most people can only produce 2 good papers every other year. You can't produce 5 good papers every year unless you're a team of 10. So you really have to look at the quality while, of course, keeping an eye on the quantity. And I think with that, not too bad. Asanteni sana. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and all the best.
Thank you so much, Professor Bai, for that insightful presentation. And I'm fairly sure that we have learned. There are so many lessons learned. Let us appreciate Professor Bai with 6 factorial. And why we are doing 6 factorial is there were 5 W's. Do you remember that? 5 W's and 1 H. So we will keep on remembering. So 6 factorial on the count of 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. Now we come to the time of plenary session, because we said and we agree that it is not necessarily one-sided, but we have several questions that or comments that we may get from the floor. And DFC, you can take some questions before the presenter comes back. And if you have questions, be brief. And we have 20 minutes to do that. If you have a question, I may be assisted from the floor. Evans, those who have questions or comments to make, raise up your hand, please. A class with questions is an interactive class or comments. And to start off, if questions are not coming voluntarily, we can have a comment from the DFC.
Thank you so much. Mine is just to appreciate the presenter, and I believe that all of us have learned a lot, is it? a lot of information that we did not know. So at this point, maybe it is important that if you have a question or a comment, please don't allow Prof to leave here and then you are like, I wish I asked that question. Because I can see most are PhD students and staff. So I think, Prof, I would just ask, you've told us a lot about these predatory journals. Now that we know, if you had made a mistake and published there, is there a way of recalling?
Yes, thank you. That's, I think, a very important point, and we've had quite a number of people who have asked the same question. You can recall a paper from anywhere. However, remember the predatory journals, by their very nature, are trying to build a profile with your very good work. So they're going to make it extremely difficult for you. However, you can keep, pushing at it. The downside is that you will eventually get the paper withdrawn, but it will take you such a long time. So my advice, for example, to my student was, you need to finish your PhD, just concentrate on working on your thesis, but you have to get another paper. It is so much less headache. Remember, you're also thinking of the mental health of the people who have to, it's better not to fight, but think of a smart way of circumventing those things.
Any other question?
Thank you, Professor, for your excellent presentation. My question is simple. What determines how much you pay for publications? And because many a journal will tell you 20,000, how much, another one say this ours is better than the other, and it's that kind of stuff, and it has happened before. Thank you.
That's, I think, the key point. That's how to tell a predatory journals. The more they charge, and the less work they're doing for what they're charging you, because you can see what they're going to do, is a very clear indicator that it's predatory. Number two, usually the processing charges vary. I showed the instructions for authors for Sage. Sage will charge 50 to 30,000 per paper, but they will tell you that this size of a photograph for a survey, or if it is color, is this much. So it is really up to you to look at it. Second thing is, if Sage charges you 50,000 and your paper or your staff paper is going to give you an impact factor of over 10, that is an investment worth making, because they're straight up telling you, for the quality of work you're getting and the glossy pages and the processing charge, you have to pay premium. It is these other ones that produce substandard publications, and when you look at their rankings, they don't exist. They're very low on the totem pole, probably hijacked. The problem, or the good thing about those, is they never go beyond 10,000. They keep it in a manageable range, and that's how they're getting so many more papers. So link, it is just the wise thing to do. Check the impact, check the journal, check the publisher. And if they're going to charge you 50,000, then it's authentic. And think about what it is going to do in terms of your institution. We have students, PhD students, who teach overtime. They prefer to pay that 50,000 because when they come for interviews to be lecturers, because right now they are tutorial fellows, nobody is going to push away somebody who has an impact factor citation of 12. So they are investing in their future. So these are the small things we try to cancel them on.
Okay, thank you much, Professor, for that marvelous presentation. I'm called Otieno Jack. I'm undertaking Masters of History in Masters of Art in History. I have interest in research, and there was a research that was put forward by Geographical Society, that I think is an international organization dealing with research. I attempted to present my proposal, but I reached a point where they wanted evidence of having done the same. So how can, probably next time, what can help me to overcome such a bottleneck when undertaking the research? Thank you.
I mentioned collaboration. Find somebody who has evidence and ask them to be, since you're doing your master's, to be a supervisor or a mentor or be involved in this research, because basically what you're referring to is Geographical Society has some money and they want to put this money to a particular project, and your proposal met up to the standards of the work that they want done, or the scope, I should say. What National Geographic wanted to know is, you're doing a master's, are you going to be able to take care of their money and deliver? Period. So somebody who has done it before has the proof that they are capable. So usually for such funding activities, I would usually try and look at if they need a senior person or somebody with experience. Something as simple as, I know you want to do something historical, but maybe what they fear is your grant management capacity. Do you know how to write a report? Do you know what are the things that are required? Once you get the funding, what intervals? What is the difference between the financial, the technical, and the realignment of the budget? Have you ever done that before? They need to be confident that they're giving you money that is going to be well spent. That's it. It is not an indictment on your capacity or your ability to be able to deliver. You might be able to deliver it better than the next person, but because they have more experience, they have to be on board. But it's only for a short time, because after a few of these, you'll be the big guy and you'll be able to present.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof, for the insightful presentation. We've really appreciated. At one point, you talked about publishing your literature review, and I was like, when it comes to the final document and you're supposed to check the plagiarism rate, how does it affect that? And then secondly, I would want to get to know, there are those journals that are free. And then it's like they expose their work to all the other areas. Is it undivisible? Or the others who publish your book, and then they have the rights, and it's for free. So it becomes the end of view, and the book is somewhere getting into the market.
Absolutely.
So what is your take on that?
My take is, where are you in your career? If you want your name in that nice book, are you willing to sacrifice the copyright? I know our own Vice Chancellor, he did his PhD in Germany, and there's a book which is going for 14 euros online of his thesis. He doesn't get a cent. So, and actually he showed me that, and I said, you mean you can't sue them? He said, no, you don't sue your German, supervisors. And I'm like, I would. I mean, 14 euros per book is good money. So at the time that they're doing the PhD, the university makes them sign those documents that, they can publish it into a book. And it's really good, because as you go to defend, your marks go up for people like that. So you choose, do I want my marks to go up, or do I want to wait, publish it myself, then come for defense? So you really need to make that choice. Your second question, or your first question, was about publishing the literature review, and then what do you do when you do the plagiarism check? Actually, the reason for the students I make to do that particular review is those who, when you read their proposal, it is so obviously plagiarized. So it is a skill that you're actually introducing them at the very beginning, so that they don't give you a headache at the very end with a lot of, when somebody plagiarizes, it becomes a habit. So you correct it, send it back, it comes back with more plagiarism. So you finish that part of your teaching with the review paper. The reason it will not come back as plagiarism is because, remember, when they're writing the final version, most of those papers are obsolete. They're too old. So the concept will be there and similar. And in a way, you'll be making them do the introduction and the literature review twice. The second time, updating the material, and now with the thought of, I've gone through this, I'm smarter, it will be very different from the original one. So I tell them, you've done all this work, it's been a rite of passage, get something out of it, because I know very well the final one is not going to be word for word. And I know where you're coming from. In most libraries, if you go and look at the literature review and look at the proposal and the final thesis, almost identical. But if you're supervising a student and they've cited 90% of their papers before 2005, what will you think? That work is not impactful, it's not current, it's not adding to new body of knowledge, because the last time anything was done was way back then. So publish that, get it out of the way, because if the topic is good, there'll be plenty more in this recent time. Your other question was? Sorry, I've forgotten your third question. There were only two. Okay. Sorry. Yes, sir.
Prof.
Yes, sir.
For the sake of students, I just want to maybe ask your advice to the students with regard to proposal writing. Because most students, masters and PhD students, they tend to take so much time in proposal writing and actually proposal writing. And usually the challenge is probably one as is having an interest in an area which is probably difficult to research. And this sometimes takes a longer period. And as you have indicated, once you start, there must be a time frame when one is expected to probably complete their research. What will be your advice to students with regard to that?
Okay, students, I think that's very insightful. Students, I'm tempted to speak my mind and say change your supervisor. But it's important to talk to your supervisor, because that is a person who understands the scope. And they should be able to guide you at the very beginning that no. This is too much, or this is enough. Remember, this is the same person when you're writing will tell you, okay, now you can submit. So when it is doing the proposal, they should be able to say, no, this is too much for a master's, this is enough for a master's, and you need to leave that. You can do it for your PhD or develop it as a project. So talk to supervisors, talk to colleagues, and when it comes to writing the proposal, focus. One thing that you need to focus on is, what is the call for the funding? Are you going to get the funding? Is the question you're going to answer included in that funding call? We have every training we do in proposal writing. Nobody is allowed to come unless they have a proposal and the funding agency where they want to send it, because institutions don't have much money. And if we're going to train, we need for you to submit that proposal, at least, and have a fighting chance of getting some money. So if the student has a very large scope and they've submitted a proposal to NRF, for example, that proposal will not be funded, because the reviewer is going to know that it is impossible to do this work in 2 years. So it is in the best interest of that student to speak to first supervisors and then also experts in the area. Number 2, always look at what the donor, like I mentioned to him, what does the donor want? It's not your money. it is the donor's money, and they have boards to report to. So even if your idea is fantastic, even if your idea is great, even if your idea is of value to your country, it's not your money, it's the donor's money. So always follow, literally tick as you go and write it. And if you follow that, you're not going to end up in a situation where you have too much content, because you'll answer the questions that they want. Some agencies later on, after you've got your master's and PhD, have a habit of writing to you and saying, we think this is a little bit large. Can you reduce it by half? Because they like the way you think. And in some cases, that's when you make a relationship with an agency. At the end of the year, they might have $500,000, and then they say, can you do a quick concept on your project on how you can spend an additional $500,000. So balance, but while you're in school for master's or PhD, keep your eye on the prize. Once you get your degree, you're free to do what you want. After all, you've earned, what do they say, the citation at graduation? The power to read. And all that appertains to the degree. One more thing, if I could just add this quickly. There's a trend recently, because now we are not talking about publication, we are talking about funding. If you look at most bilateral funds from all sorts of different agencies, philanthropic agencies, they are very, very in tune with your national priorities. They know about your Big Four. They know about your medium-term plan. They know about your Vision 2030. And of course, they know about the Sustainable Development Goals. Remember when we were talking about keywords in publications, in your title, in your abstract, and the keywords and through? If you're writing a grant proposal to any of the European agencies, and they actually see Sustainable Development Goals, and you tie that with Vision 2030, because the SDGs are due in 2030. We have our own path to Vision 2030. And then in 2018, we even specified further. And we said, of the Vision 2030, we are going to focus in the next 4 years on the Big Four. I guarantee you, they have people in those offices who are literally looking, what's the goal for Kenya? What's the goal for Tanzania? And I talk with my colleagues and they're like, you just attract these funds when you're sleeping. I say, no, I know what Kenya wants, and this is what the donor wants. Why should I argue with them? Just tell them what they want to hear, and you'll get the funding. You really have to be very careful about exactly what it is that the donor is asking for. And if you try that tactic and it fails, there's my email address. You email me and say, Prof, it didn't work. I need another tutorial. And you've got one on me. All right? Thank you so much.
Once again, let's appreciate Professor for being a strong reader and for making all the responses to our queries. We know that we may have several of them, but we are free to interact with her, and you will be able to get more. In our program, we were expecting to do something with the registration, but we are not going to have a presentation on that, but just a 1 minute as a way forward, because this is more internal. That is about Google Scholar. We have been told about the benefits, and now the question is, how are we going to do it to ensure that we also benchmark with the best? Thank you. I'll call upon Evans to give us a 1 minute way forward.
Just want to appreciate all of you. I think I've learned a lot from the presentation. Thank you so much, Prof. When it comes to Google Scholar, I think there is much we are needed to do. Because it is a hands-on thing, registration is a hands-on thing, with the permission of DVCRA, I will request that we arrange ourselves into schools, so that the office which is spearheading this exercise can be able to visit each school individually and take them through the registration process, take them through on how to ensure that the publications which each individual faculty staff and maybe students have done is linked to the university profile and also into their personal profile. So with your permission, Madam DVC, I will request that we do another program which is now more individualized, more personalized to the schools so that we can be able to take them through the registration process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evans. And as a way forward now, we know we are going to implement whatever we have learned today with the assistance of our lead person, DVCRA, and even the council. And we are going to have a photo after our crossing prayer, a group photo which is being arranged there. We are also going to have lunch, so the lunch will be taken at the cafeteria. But before the photo and the lunch, I wish to call upon Mr. Mark Lachonyo to come and present a photo of thanks to all of us. Mark, karibu. And as part of corporate team, we are also saying that we have a way forward of ensuring that we benchmark. And the benchmarking has now come to us, Professor. Benchmarking has come to us. We have not come to Technical University of Kenya. We are very happy about bringing the benchmarks to us, and we will be there to implement. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I know somehow it was hot, but you've learned a lot. And on your behalf, I've greeted the presenter. So I've said the greatest word of thank you. But I want to say that how many of you have managed to benefit on what she said? And I think, just take a look. All of them have at least benefited. And I think the next thing is for us to form a community of scholars and a community of researchers and to create mentoring and coaching groups. Because before I say that great word, it's only one. In the last about 2 years, how many have published articles? Now, why are people fearing? Why, if you've published, you've published. If you've not, you've not. Okay, let's just appreciate them. I think that's a good thing. And I've asked about 2 years ago when we were doing some trainings, how many have mentored at least one on how to publish and how to write these articles and to present in international conferences? Let me see. This one I have to count. If you've mentored, not here, anywhere else. Now, let's count. And DVC, please look at these people. Let's count how many have mentored people and have done something. 1, 2, 3. Now, the rest of us, please clap for them. I think today we have gotten the greatest mentor here. I think, Prof, it's wonderful because we always say that in academics, there's no competition. We only talk about collaborations. So if you're having the best practices on the other side, why can't you at times jump over here, talk to our people? Because we're talking about enhancing postgraduate studies and research and also profiling. So ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say finally that it is wonderful for us to sit like this. It's not about the lunch. It's not about coming to sit here and see or to please the administration. It's not about pleasing Dr. Ramani, but it is about us learning something. If you look at the presenters, we learned something much from the digital presentation, and I want to say that the presenters and all those people who talked this morning did a lot of things, and may God continue to bless you as we learn. Now, through your desk, Madam DVC, I think this thing we should be doing it as something within about 2-3 months. We come back again and look at what have we achieved. And if we've achieved something, then we really need to see by what you used, is it the H index? We just want to verify, did we learn something? And if we will come back again here in the month of June to see that we have achieved something, we have gotten about 30 publications, then we shall have known that we've learned. So with those many remarks, I just want to close by saying that Achebe says, how many read Chinua Achebe? Any book? Which one? I don't know which one you read. Me, I read all of them. It says, a man who calls his people to a feast does not do so to remove them from starving. All of you have books and you have food in your homes, right? And when people meet at the village moonlight ground, they don't do that because of the moon, but they do it because it is important for scholars like yourselves to come together and talk about what matters, the state of postgraduate education and the state of research and publication, which is currently a requirement. When you go back to Technical University, pass a lot of regards to our colleagues there, and we really appreciate your presentation and all the people who sat from morning up to this time. Thank you so much. May God continue to bless you. It was not just as a wish of you coming. Some of us came from very far, and let's extend this to other people who did not come, so that at the end of the year we can do a nice report online, knowing how many have achieved something. So thank you so much, because I cannot mention names. You know what you've done for this particular activity and also what you plan to do in the near future. So may God bless you and take this appreciation. The word is thank you. All those said are nothing. It is thank you, and we appreciate everything. God bless you, and maybe you feel free to move on with the program. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you also, Mark. We also thank you for thanking us. And a closing prayer. We have been promised that we are going to have all the presentations into our emails. So make sure that you have left your emails with us. This is something which we are going to share with even others, and this is for free, courtesy of the presenters. Dr. Josephine, kindly cross for us and also pray for the food that we are going to partake.
Thank you very much. I will request you to stand up so that we can end this session with a word of prayer. Let us pray. Our dear loving Father, in Jesus' mighty name, we come before your presence, thanking you, Father, for the session that you have taken us through. We appreciate you, Lord, because you started with us and you've ended with us. We appreciate you, Lord, for giving us such a presenter who's been able to give us insights that, Lord, we need to follow to be able to grow our institution and also to grow ourselves. We thank you, Father, for each and every member who was able to attend. And even those who have not been able to come, Father, let us be able to share the information we have acquired with them. The Lord will be able to grow together. We commit everything unto able hands as we depart. And we get back to our destinations. May you give us journey mercies. Father, there is a meal we are about to share. We appreciate it. We thank you for it, for the provision, because this is all from you. May you bless it as we partake of it. And at the end of it all, glory and honor shall return unto you. We thank you, Father, for the management team that was able to organize for this forum. The Lord, we shall be able to grow together as an institution and be able to give back to the society. We thank you and we bless you. Continue expanding our territories, and we'll continue to serve you and to give you honor. We pray all this, knowing that there's so much that, Lord, we have to tell you, but you know the desires of our hearts. You are going to meet each one of us at the point of our needs, for we pray all this, believing and trusting in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you. We may now proceed to a group photo where we need to have even the students and members of staff with our guest.